Hey everybody, I'm Casey. In this video, I'm going to show you some quick tricks that you can do in the garden right now that are going to save you time and money. If you do these things, you're going to help yourself out next spring because they're pretty easy to do. They might take a little bit of money up front, a little bit of time, but they're going to pay dividends down the road. So first, let's talk about your watering situation. It's really important. If you've ever been confused by your watering situation, don't worry. It happens to all of us. And what I do is I rely on a few key fundamentals to help guide me in new watering situations that I need to understand. So the first one is huge and it affects plants pretty much everywhere around here in Southern California, and it's overwatering. You wouldn't think that'd be a huge problem in a desert, but with everybody having automatic irrigation systems and kind of setting it and forgetting it, it happens all the time. So overwatering can be fatal, and it's defined on Google's Oxford Languages as watering too much. So yeah, we know it's watering too much. The key for us though is, how do we know when it's too much? How do we know when it's too little? The key is you have to scratch down into the earth a couple inches to check the water level, because oftentimes on the top of the soil it looks pretty dry. If the soil is wet, it's going to be darker and it might kind of clump up a little bit. If it's super dry, it's going to be like really dusty and flaky and kind of flying off. And that's another big issue here, is underwatering. So, but kind of knowing the key to overwatering helps you avoid the underwatering, and it all kind of ties together. Hit that subscribe button again if you want to learn about your timers. So I'm going to break them all down in the next video, and you'll get a notification on that if you subscribe. So thank you. If you kind of already know all these steps we've been talking about, you're looking to get to the next one, you probably already know this, but you know, you'd want to run your sprinklers for about I recommend 5 minutes a piece when you're doing an audit and you're checking them, because sometimes there's underground issues. But you'll want to run them for 5 minutes, mark any super dry spots with a rock or a flag, something you can go back to, because you know, when they're running, you just want to get through the report and mark all the areas to come back to fix them later, is what I do at least. And you know, you really need to look at each fixture as well and just make sure it's spraying out right. If not, flag it with something. And also, if it's leaking a lot or flooding anywhere, that's something that's going to probably need to get fixed right away. Small leaks in the fixtures are common. So, but if it's like coming out a lot and like, you know, the water's going down 10 houses, that probably should get fixed right away. Let's talk about my silver bullet for the soil. I love this one. I love composting. I love using compost in basically all my gardens. So most plants are looking for a fertile soil called loam, which is kind of like in the middle between, just really basically breaking it down. You have clay soil and sandy soil. And loam is kind of right in the middle, where there's a little more variety between the sizes of the pieces of soil and stuff. It gives more room for the plants to go find homes for their roots and water, and then you kind of get a good balance that way. So loam, good. Loam, good. That's the takeaway there. And compost is the silver bullet for it, because usually no matter what soil you have, if you put compost on it, it helps you get to that point of getting that fertile loam. So to me, there's not many cure-alls or fix-alls in life. There's probably a handful of really good ones. In the garden, this to me is one of them for sure. And most gardeners already know about this. It's not like a super secret, but I can't stress how important it is. It's not that expensive. You can get it in these bags and throw it down, and you know, it helps if you work it into the soil, but you can just leave it on top for now, and when you get to planting later, it'll kind of be there already working and fall into the holes like when you plant. So it's like a quick trick. But you know, there's other benefits to mulch too, and a lot of them are well known, but I'll cover them right here real quick. So they're going to keep your weeds down. You know, they're not going to kill all your weeds, but they'll help like stop new weed seeds from sprouting because they kind of cover it up. You should put like an inch or two of this compost down on top, and it helps with reducing your weeds quite a bit. And then it's, like I said, it'll improve your soil ecology, so that's a huge one. And it also insulates your soil, so you know, if the plants get extreme cold or extreme heat, that layer is like a little blanket on top of them, and it helps, you know, reduce the stress from those extremes. And also it reduces your need to water, which is awesome, and that, you know, kind of ties into the first one. If you have a thick layer of mulch down, usually you don't need to water as often. Like you can go a lot longer of time without, you know, having to water, because that blanket there is kind of trapping the water that you put down before in and stopping it from just like evaporating into the atmosphere. So yeah, there's a lot of good reasons there. And I would even take it a step further, and I would put down organic fertilizer with microbes and put that down underneath the compost first, and maybe a little bit of nitrogen fertilizer as well to kind of help that compost break down quicker and also feed your plants at the same time. So that's usually how I prep existing beds, planter beds and whatnot. And you know, it's worth mentioning there's a few notes on compost on what not to do, because if you stack soil or compost next to any wood, living tree, or like your house, for example, and you stack a bunch of soil there, that soil is going to retain water. It's going to destroy that wood over time. It can take years, but it will. And so you really, you should not be putting compost right next to tree trunks or bush, you know, crowns where they come out of the ground right there. You want to keep that kind of clear and clean. If there's like roots exposed, you can cover those roots a little bit, but you really want to be away from the main trunk where it comes into the ground there by 3 or 4 inches. Otherwise you can risk killing the plant with like overwatering, or those like evil root rots come in. Now the other thing that you don't want to do with compost is overuse it. It's really easy to do, but in its pure form it's not very useful to plants. The soil, you need to have other things in it like minerals and non-organic matter. So that's why potting soil is different than planting compost. And you have to be careful with overusing compost, especially in containers where you don't want too much compost. It fascinates me that you can just take your kitchen scraps and put them in a bin outside and get this, they call it, you know, the black gold. It's the best compost you can get, I think. Compost is such a cheap input, and you know, you might be able to find it locally for free or for very low cost from local sources. But you can also just go grab it in bags at your garden store. That's usually a high quality compost product like planting mix. The other way, if you need a lot of it, you can get it in bulk from like a building supply store, and it's probably gonna be like a shredded fine product, like a wood product, so not as much nutrition in it. But I like that option too because it's low cost and it works really well. And then I kind of put in my own fortifications into the soil with that compost, so I'm able to kind of control the quality that way and get better costs. So I really do like the scoops. You know, I have a pickup truck, so I just go down to the building supply store and they drop in like yards at a time. We have one last trick for the garden, and here's what it is. I would like you to go out into your garden and just putter around a little bit. Take a look around. Perform a general audit. And for me, I like to bring my iPhone because I can like write things down with it and take pictures. And a lot of times I'm going out and doing this professionally. So, you know, if you wanted to do that, you could too, if you wanted to try to make it as efficiently as possible, but you really don't even need to do that. You could make a huge difference doing like basically absolutely nothing except just taking yourself out there and just walking around your yard. And all you have to do is return from that walk with a couple of ideas. So the goal is you want to get joy out of your yard. It's a luxury to have one, and you don't want it to be a burden. You want to get joy out of it. So, I recommend, make it a point to go out there when it's really nice out, the early morning, sunset, great times to go out, walk on your grounds with your favorite beverage, maybe a coffee, and, walk around, enjoy it. So what I think you might find if you do this is ideas are going to start to stir within you. But if you're new to the garden, or you kind of have already spent a lot of time out there, you might be asking yourself, well, what exactly should I be looking for? And that's a really good question. And it's hard for me to answer because everyone's situation is different. But definitely you got to deal with safety hazards. And I'd also look and see if the garden, the yard, maybe even the structures on your property, I'd look to see if they were showing me signs of stress. Because it's easy to overlook things in our day-to-day, but if you're going out and looking a little more mindfully, oftentimes you'll just see these things sending signals to you help me. So I would look for that. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes you gotta look a little closer, and so anyways, specifically in fall, I would really look out for any major infestations of bugs and look for those bug invaders. Bugs can still be a big problem in fall, but they're kind of winding down from their peak season in summer, so it's a good time to identify what they are and where they are and how bad they are. And you can treat them right now, but there's also some treatments coming up in the winter that can really help reduce your bug populations in spring, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. But ants, you can look for ants. They're kind of easy to see. So ants aren't always bad in themselves, but they're a sign that there's stuff going on. If you look around the trees where you have ants, look for the black sooty mold. It's like a black film on the leaves of the plant. And if you have that, you for sure have some sort of bugs, and the ants are usually they're farming the bugs and spreading them around the garden. So it's kind of annoying, even though they do some good things too, like clean up the garden for you. Anyways, so the ants are spreading probably aphids, mealybugs, scales, something like that. And another thing besides the insects is going to be diseases. So in the fall here, oftentimes we'll have rampant powdery white mildew. It can take out roses and grapevines, stuff like that. A lot of times they'll come back, but they'll just get literally destroyed for a while when they're under it. So that should probably be treated if you want to keep your plants looking tip-top, because it not only that, but it can be fatal for plants. So I do have what I usually use in the garden, myself, and it's worked really great for me, is another kind of general cure-all product. And this one is horticultural oil sprays. Now, you really have to be careful with these in the summer because they can burn your plants. And, I really gotta say, you have to look at the manufacturer label. You have to follow it. You have to read the safety instructions. This stuff can be really dangerous to do yourself. So you really want to be intentional and safe when you do it. I mean, it's not fun to say, but this stuff's it's super serious. If it, you don't all these gardening things, they're not toys. Anyways, so, you can use this horticultural oil, and it will kill diseases and bugs at the same time. And there's some horticultural oils that aren't even based on chemicals or oil. They're made out of neem oil or something from a tree. And so you can kind of go around and spray them and not feel too bad and control some of the problems in your garden right now. It's nice because it doesn't have the toxins. It kind of physically smothers the spores of the diseases, adult bugs, and then even insect eggs. So you're helping reduce next generations too. It's fantastic, very effective. So another thing you can look for in the garden right now would be looking for weeds. Weeds are a big problem as we get into the rainy season, And you can look for broadleaf weeds year round. If they're in your lawn, they're kind of easy. You can put down some like weed and feed type products, but you want to make sure they're good for your type of lawn. Always check with your garden, whoever's selling it, or read the labels yourself. Make sure it's compatible with the type of lawn you have. But fall is great to treat crabgrass. So if you have crabgrass problems right now and you've had them and you don't know how to get control of it, fall, winter, early spring is the time to do it. And you can use the preventative crabgrass products, and it's not going to take out the mature, like big clumps of crabgrass. You can grab those and get a screwdriver and get like the taproot and the whole thing out at once on the mature plants. But if you put down the preventative products in fall a couple times and winter, it'll really knock down your crabgrass population come next spring. That's a huge one right there. If you have that problem, you do always have to be careful with your herbicide use, and be careful where you drop it, because it can hurt your desirable plants too. So be careful with the preventers and the herbicide, the plant killer, the weed killers, because it can hurt your good plants too. But anyways, you can do little things like that now, and maybe watch a YouTube video on certain subjects to grow your skills and branch out and do even more. There's always so much to do out there. Prioritization is key, and just try to be smart. Choose optimal times to work outside so it's not too miserable. Stay safe. If you're still lost about what to do, here's what I do. I try thinking about the yard based on how the person wants to use the space. So if you're not sure what to do in your yard, just think about it like, what do I want to use my yard for? And then once you identify that, you can start picking away at things that can help you get to that spot. And it'll help you identify what's in your way. So in conclusion, we talked about 3 things that can save you time and money in the garden and that you can do right now. Knowing how and when to water and applying that knowledge to your current watering system was a big one. The second was harnessing the power of compost. It's always been worth it for me when I use it, because it just sets up the soil for long-term success, and it's one of the cheapest inputs you can get. It's always been a great value. And the third thing is to take a look and observe your space. With a million things to do in the garden, it pays off to focus on the most important tasks first. So create a list or just do the easy things right away, but also think about the big picture at the same time. Specific things like dead zones in the garden or garden invaders, and don't be afraid to ask for help from local pros or online or in this chat. Because all the garden rules have exceptions, there's nuance, and that's what can get frustrating for people, because the solutions can vary. But doing these things are generally going to help your garden flourish and help you not have to start over and just redo everything, which is a big money sink. So thank you for being here, folks. Please hit the thumbs up if you enjoyed this, if it was helpful, and we'll see you next week to understand your sprinkler timer and more of my perspectives on how to help you grow the best garden.